Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, July 17, 2025. Time in Texas about 10 a.m. So let's get started. What's going on in the U.S.? We do know that we have a disturbed area off of the south coast of the U.S., most likely to go into Louisiana today, mostly as a disorganized system to bring heavy rain. Currently, the National Hurricane Center gives it 30% chance to increase in intensity in the next 48 hours and 30% in the next 7 days. However, this system has decreased in intensity. Yesterday it was 40 and 40. Today it's 30 and 30. And is predicted to go on land, so it's not predicted to increase in intensity and to come ashore in Louisiana to bring heavy rain along this coastline of the U.S. So that's going on. What do we have going on with space weather? We have a 60% chance today for M flares. And an interesting note is how moths in Australia use space, the constellations, to navigate. So every spring in Australia, the bogon moths migrate 1,000 kilometers plus to a series of caves up in the Alps or mountains of Australia, which they have not seen before. But now a new study published in Nature indicates that the moths use the Milky Way, especially the Carina Nebula, as their landmark to navigate. So isn't God great in his creation? And now we have this. Okay, so overnight, last night in Alaska, along the Aleutian Islands, we had initially a 7.6 earthquake. It was downgraded to a 7.3. This happened Texas time about 4:30 p.m. yesterday afternoon. Now, a tsunami warning was put out and then downgraded about 90 minutes later. But it's odd that both DUTCHSINSE and EARTHMASTER, who brought up the buoys immediately while this was ongoing, there were no buoys in event mode. So we see what we can see with our own lying eyes, a measuring instrument, the buoys. There are sensors all in this area. So there were about 100 buoys in this area. And none of them were in event mode when supposedly we had just had a 7.6 or so earthquake that was going to cause a tsunami. So what's going on with this? Now, we do have verification this morning that aftershocks are continuing. So that happened yesterday. Now we have this. Who are you going to trust? I don't know. I mean, it's like even with the weather, you have to do your own research to find out actually what's going on. And we've had now DUTCHSINSE on his episode last night regarding the Alaska earthquake brought this out because there had been earthquakes in Alaska, and then we know we had some in Indonesia, Panama. I reported on these yesterday. Japan continues. So DUTCHSINSE predicts, based on this earthquake and in Alaska and these other earthquakes that had been happening in the last 2 to 3 days. He predicts a hit in California in the next 5 to 7 days of something like a 6. So we'll have to keep our eyes open for that. And we have this. Now, when this earthquake in Alaska happened yesterday in Texas time, about 4:30 p.m., there was an immediate drop in the ocean level, the beach levels, along the Aleutian Islands of 15 feet in 30 minutes, and we know that's a sign of a tsunami. The ocean drops, pulls away, and then a huge tsunami wave comes in. So that was recorded. There were also variations with the depth of the earthquake. Initially, DUTCHSINSE put out what the USGS was putting out, which was 36 kilometers or 22 miles. Later, the USGS revised the depth to 12 miles. So that's going on. And we have, and no buoys were detected moving, supposedly with this huge tsunami coming in. Okay. And the earthquake occurred near the Kodiak Island, allegedly produced potential for a tsunami. Alerts were given out to the people using sirens and their phone alerts. Aftershocks have continued, ranging from 5 to 2s. Now, DUTCHSINSE also gave this out. If, based on his prediction model, there isn't a major earthquake in the Los Angeles area in the next 5 to 7 days, that this energy from the Alaska earthquake would spread across the Craton area of America, and which is a part of the bedrock underneath America, producing 4s and 5s from one side of America all the way over to the East Coast. So yeah, that's going on. And we have this from PINBALL yesterday. I know New York proper also reported on this. So the U.S. caught some Iranian, believed to be an Iranian sleeper cell. They caught 5 Iranians and 2 Uzbekistan citizens trying to sneak into the U.S. from Canada into New York. So they've been captured. CIA operation, 5 Iranian, 2 Uzbekistan, Canada into, well, they were coming via Vermont into New York. And they've been arrested, and the arrest took place July 15, but it was just coming out on the news yesterday, July 16. Yeah, so that's going on. And now we have this. We're going to talk about, I have several sources, more on the Epstein, what's going on with the Epstein client list, which we know Epstein was a honeypot operation that, according to Robert Barnes, attorney who worked with the government for decades, Epstein was recruited by the CIA in the 1970s and ran the biggest honeypot operation in several locations in the U.S., including a ranch in New Mexico, a townhouse in New York, and, of course, Epstein Island, located in the Virgin Islands. So he was recruited in the 1970s, and Ghislaine Maxwell According to sources, Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, she was the daughter of a Mossad operator. Mossad is the intel agency for Israel. So now, new information comes out. She worked with Epstein as his assistant in trafficking and grooming underage girls. It's coming out somewhere as young as 10 to possibly 16. And she was convicted, and she's currently serving a 20-year term. Now, Epstein was charged and was convicted. That's why he was in jail, and allegedly committed suicide. Now it's come out with different parts of information. It does not appear that Epstein committed suicide, that another individual was put into his cell. He was moved. That individual apparently did pass away, but many experts do not believe that was Epstein. Now, this is my position on Epstein's alleged suicide, that Epstein was recruited and was a member of certain families. That's why he was put in his position, a joint effort by the CIA, MI6, and Mossad for a honeypot operation. The question is, whose family is he related to? I believe that another person passed away in his alleged cell. Epstein is alive, and it's unknown where he is. Ghislaine Maxwell continues to be in jail, convicted of child trafficking. So if there was no Epstein client list, why were these two individuals actually charged and convicted? So there you go. And now we have this. So from a source, Legal AF, I'll list that for you. Epstein was also involved with the FBI, and there continuously from the 1970s till Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were charged and convicted, which was about in 2015 or so. There was a honeypot operation going on, sponsored by the CIA, MI6, and Mossad, and information was continuously going to the CIA, MI6, and Mossad. We're talking about a client list, flight logs, videos, sound recordings, photos, and so on. For President Trump and Pam Bondi and Kash Patel and Dan Bongino to come out now and say there's no client list, I've got this to say, shut up. Okay, so Legal AF brought this out. Yes. All this information, he interviewed author Michael Wolff. Now, this is my position. I believe that President Trump's public affairs group are doing overtime and putting out various individuals in various genres to bring out information, disinformation, and sometimes to mix the two in the same interview to sow questions among the American people. So this Michael Wolff brings out some of the people who went to Jeffrey Epstein's island. Castro, the Pope, MBS, that's Mohammed bin Salman. He's the leader of Saudi Arabia. President Clinton. Yeah, all of this matches up with my research I've done in the last 5 years. And we had this. A close friend of Epstein was also Ehud Barak. He was part of the Israeli government. And Steve Bannon was also mention and knows that Epstein, oh, no, this is coming out. Steve Bannon, he's an independent journalist who actually worked for a short time in President Trump's first term as, I believe, a publicist. Or Steve Bannon and Epstein both hate Trump and President Trump. So that's what's being put out by this source, Legal AF. And in 2004, excuse me, there was a split between Epstein and President Trump, and that was based on a real estate deal gone bad. And we have this, Epstein and Elon Musk. It's not believed that Elon Musk went to the Epstein Island, but that various tech people, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, is associated with Palantir and Google, were advising or giving information to Epstein. Epstein, excuse me, during the 10 years when it's well established that President Trump and Epstein, both single men, often went around together, clubbing or whatever, partying, that during this period, Epstein was put forth as a financial advisor. That could be why he has files or associations with MBS of Saudi Arabia. Excuse me. He was functioning as a financial advisor. And we have this. Elon Musk was never seen at the Epstein houses. And Legal AF puts forth that Ghislaine Maxwell stopped working with Epstein in 2004. But she was later convicted about the same time as Epstein in about 2015. Now, Chris Hedges on YouTube puts out additional information. He interviewed Nick Bryant, who talks about the Epstein list and flight logs were released, and I recall that about in 2015. And it's curious about a memo that was put out last week by the White House regarding the Epstein client list was not signed neither by President Trump, Pam Bondi, nor the FBI. So no one signed the memo. And this source, Chris Hedges, puts forth, it's believed, Epstein Island had 1,000 plus underage victims, and that girls were trafficked by Epstein for 25 years. So that's going on with the help of Ghislaine Maxwell, the CIA, the MI6, and Mossad. And also associated with Epstein is Ehud Barak, part of the government or in the past of Israel. Bill Richardson, a former New Mexico governor. So that's going on. Yeah. And we have this. The Liberty Daily is putting forth the information by a former CIA associate. I think that was John David Steele. That yes, the CIA, the MI6, the Mossad, and the FBI is also involved in the trafficking and procurement of underage individuals, and this is occurring inside the U.S. for pedo and ritual purposes, primarily operated by the CIA. And we have another source, Brian Taylor Cohen, who says, if there's nothing to the Epstein list, why then yesterday, July 16, was a vote taken in Congress whether to release the Epstein list or not? And the Republicans all voted no. So, from Rolling Stone, we have this. So we see President Trump is falling somewhat in approval in the U.S. over the Epstein client list debacle. But we don't see the Democrats faring much better, according to Rolling Stone. A Quinnipiac poll just released shows the Dems at the lowest level of approval since 2009 at 19%. And I will remind you of this line I used from the movie Shooter in my last video. I'll repeat it. They told us that artificial sweeteners were safe. They told us that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And they told us that Anna Nicole married for love. And now add to this, now they're trying to tell us there is no Jeffrey Epstein client list. So it's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.